Welcome in, everybody. I'm James Osborn, known as Boy Howdy, along with Shannon Drayer, 710 ESPN Seattle, 710sports.com Mariners insider. Shannon, we did it. We made it through half of a baseball season and the All-Star game. We're here today to break down some of what we saw in the first half, look forward a little bit to some of what we're going to see in the second half, and do a little pulse check. Where are we in this Mariners reimagine? So, let's start with the first half.
Wait. First, I have to apologize.
Okay, start with an apology. It's a great video starts with an apology.
And I don't do this very often.
Yes.
And I felt really bad about this, but we did a vodcast without you early on in the season. I did it against my better come back.
I'm not doing this anymore.
Come back.
I'm not doing this, Shannon. You're going to do this without me. What are we doing?
Put the bat down. But yeah, I'm very sorry about that, and I almost, I tried to insist, but there were other powers. And I'm glad you're here today. And I mean, the bats are just in case.
Yeah.
I've got to find John Mabry. It's number 47 on the end right there.
I've got a genuine M110 David Bell cracked bat. You know he definitely squibbed this one over to the first baseman.
I've got a great David Bell story.
Oh.
Would you like a great David Bell story?
Let's save it because people actually want some content right now.
Darn it.
So let's talk about this first half. We got our apologies out of the way. What we expected to see in the first half, what we actually saw. How do we reconcile those two things?
I think it's pretty darn close. I just think that it was in a strange order. Obviously, the 13-2 starts was an illusion, and I'm sorry if anybody got sucked into that, but you should know better. It's a 162-game season, and in the end, I think talent wins out when you're talking about baseball teams, and you know what was put together. You know, they went out and they made big moves. You know, they didn't invest anything in the bullpen, and that was by design. And so, and then they filled in spots with what they could get and what could kind of fit into what they were doing, like, what you had at shortstop to start the season in Tim Beckham. So 13-2 was fun. Japan was fun. Spring training was great. And then May hit. And I think that when you look overall at the record, I think it's pretty close. Do I want to see anything like May ever again in my entire life? No.
Will you again?
And you know what? That's one of my keys to the second half. And not a key in the fact of, it's going to be a successor of the, whatnot if you go on. But no, I don't. And as much as I think I saw what I expected to see in the first half, just in kind of a different order, the baseball was very bad in May, and the controllables were not controlled. And while I think, I'm sure there will be another losing season, losing month, there could be 3 more losing months. I don't want to see one that is that mistake-ridden. That there was just far too much. And I do think that you are going to see better defense in the second half. So anything like May, no, and I'll be horrified even more so the first time round. But with everything that they were trying to do, I think they knew that there were going to be big bumps at the beginning, and I've said all along it's what they do at the end and the progress and the upward trend that is of most concern to me. So record-wise, not a huge surprise. Player-wise, I think we saw the players I expected to see. The players I expected to not be here at the end of it are not here. Are there still moves to be made? Hopefully. But I think with the exception of the horror show of May, and I mean, you still, if that was an 11-win month with half the errors, it would have been much better. Other than that, I think it's about what I expected to see.
Yeah, I don't want to beat too much of a dead issue with the defense in the first half, but I would say that is one of the most surprising, and I probably shouldn't have been surprised because you got a lot of veteran guys who came in, and maybe most explicitly that I can ever remember, a general manager and a manager basically saying like, hey, you're just here to play yourself into a trade, like that's what we're doing, so, show up and play and have fun and do whatever. Like, I would find that pretty demotivating, and I think we saw it in the defense. And I didn't expect that kind of attitude, which I believe that attitude sort of permeated the team and might have resulted in some general lackadaisical effort in defense and lack of focus in defense that permeated even to some of the younger players and some guys you would expect to be average on defense. Domingo Santana, to me, did not have a reputation coming into this year as this guy is a terrible defender. He wasn't considered a plus defender, but he wasn't considered like he's an out-of-position guy, he should just be playing DH. That's not the reputation he came in to me. And when he showed up and played left field that way that he did, it just looked so bad to me. And it reminded me of this idea that this guy just doesn't want to play this position. So I don't think he's going to play very hard in this spot. And I think you saw that with a few guys.
Don't you learn something about him there, though?
Yeah,
if
and I
that's
think
the case,
you do.
Don't you learn something about him?
Yeah, which is interesting because from an attitude perspective, from the approach of the plate, from just the power that he provides, the all fields power, I mean, you like that kind of bat. And like if he's going to play average defense and have like actually surprising above average base running speed, that's the kind of guy you'd like to have, especially in a middle average contract. But if the attitude is really what I thought it was, you can't have that in a rebuilding team. You can't have that when you get good. That's the kind of stuff that tanks your mentality. So, yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if it was, but that's what it appeared to be. Also, he's much better in right field, much more comfortable in right field.
Have you ever seen a player go from one side of the field to the other and be a completely different defender?
No, and I'm sure
Never.
you've heard Mike Blowers talk about this, but Chris Prieto explained it, and for some players, glove side in the outfield toward the foul line is the most important thing, and they're just so right hand or left hand, they've got to be either here or there, and that could be part of it. But a lot of what you're saying, I think, is something at some point, some decisions are going to have to be made on outfielders, and you look at the offense that he's put up, but I don't think it's out of the question that he's moved. But I don't think he's moved for nothing. I think that he is, and I think everybody is available that is not named J.P. Crawford right now on that team. So I think that those are things that you learn. Second half could show something different if he isn't traded, but you've got a lot of young outfielders coming, one perhaps soon. And where do you put them all? Where do you put them when Mitch Haniger gets back? And I think that that is important, that everything that you've just pointed out, if it is what it appeared to be, that's something that they're taking note of.
Yeah. Let's go through some of the key contributors and some of the key names that we needed to watch this year. There are a few guys where this 2019 Mariners season was going to be more important for. I think one of those, maybe in my opinion, chief among them, of the guys who opened the season with the team, Malik Smith. I think that this season, more than most players on this roster, was about, do you have it? Are you a part of this future? What did you see out of Malik Smith in the first half?
I think his grade is very incomplete, but trending in a positive direction right now, and it also falls back into what is this outfield going to be. I think ultimately he would probably end up in left field when all pieces are in place. Well, not even all. It's going to take a few years to get all pieces in place, but I think that that is somewhere that you might see him go. And I don't mean to get too much on Santana, as we did in the first part of this. Both Malik and Santana have been very good about getting out and getting in their extra work and working with Chris Prieto in the outfield. That's not been a problem with anyone. Malik's has been a little bit of a revelation in that he was so bad to start with. He looked like a player who had absolutely no baseball instinct out in center field, and you were wondering, how did you get here?
Yeah.
How did you survive in the big leagues?
It was
almost
puzzling.
Right.
It didn't make any sense at all. Like, again, I kind of like Domingo Santana. He didn't come over with the reputation of, this is a terrible outfielder.
Right.
And then he showed up as a young guy at center field as your job and was awful. Like, that was not on anyone's radar.
And I think you learned something about Malik's there. And I think it was so funny. He had that interview with our afternoon show, Danny David Moore, in the offseason, and he's got the big zero on his back because he just doesn't care about anything. That's not true at all. It's the exact opposite.
That's what he would really like to believe.
It is the exact opposite.
That is trying to wish yourself into what you want to
this is
think.
a guy who, he was spinning as bad as ever, any young player, he was spinning as bad as Mike Zunino was before he was sent down. I mean,
rest in
you
peace.
might have had to
Not
go.
Not actually, but like for career-wise.
Have they sent you a ticket yet?
They need to send me an invitation for sure to come down there. Mike, if you're listening, I'm ready. I will be down there. We'll go to Boca Raton. We'll make a little vacation out of it. We'll get in the cage. Just like Bob Stelton, and we will get this thing right. So please reach out. Anyways.
I think that you learned that he did care, and I think he got in his head way too much and didn't have. And these are the things that you hear all the time. Oh, position change can make a big difference. Check. We saw that. Can affect all aspects of the game. Not having a spring training can make a difference. Check.
Yeah.
We saw that too.
Yeah.
Pressure coming over from another team. Check. I think that also played a big part with Malik's. I think he wanted to impress, had no spring training, put too much on himself early, and I think he is a player that needs extreme focus in everything that he does, and those other things were up there and in his head, and it just threw everything off. And the reset down in Tacoma helped. The everyday work with Chris Prieto helped. The work with Mike Cameron helped, who I thought was a perfect person, just kind of personality-wise, to work with Malik. I really enjoy Malik Smith. He has been one of my favorite young players on this team, and a big part of it is because he does care. I mean, he might step in it every now and then. He might zig when he's supposed to zag, but you can tell that he wants to get everything right and that he does care in everything that he does out on the field, and he puts in the work. So I think that what we have seen since his return from AAA is very promising, both at the plate and in the field. Is he going to be a Gold Glover? Probably not. Is he going to have outfield defense that we can live with? I think absolutely.
Yeah, interesting.
What do you think?
I'm kind of in a tough spot with how I view the Mariners 2019 in the future, because when I'm looking at this team being good in 2 or 3 years, maybe starting to look better next year, I'm trying to figure out who's going to be the guy that carries the water for these teams. You know, like who are going to be the guys you count on as cornerstones? Because I don't think it really matters all that much to find role players in this season of rebuilding. I think it matters to find core building blocks. And for me, Malik Smith needs to play center field, and he needs to hit above 300, and he's got to have an on-base percentage of 370, and he's got to steal 40 bags. He's got to do basically all those things to be considered a building block. Do I think that's who he's going to be in 2 years? Not really. Like, that's a really, really high expectation. But with that skill set, that's kind of what you have to be a building block. Otherwise, you're a piece. You're just a supplement. And if you're a supplement, I don't need that right now. Like, you need to know who the guys are that you're going to build this thing on. So, to me, Malik Smith he's best positioning himself to be a valuable asset to move to get a close to Major League ready corner piece, or to supplement with a top-level bullpen piece when you're getting closer to contending. I don't think I'm looking at him as, this is a guy we're trying to figure out if we can build around him or not. That's not who he is to me.
And I think it is incomplete, because those numbers that you set right there, what are they going to be in 3 years? And he's not there right now. As good as the turnaround has been, he's still a little bit below that. And also, what's the game going to look like in 3 years?
Yeah.
There might be more of a premium on that type player. There might be rules that are put into place that are trying to get back to that speed game, and all of a sudden he becomes that much more valuable.
It's tough to see him as a corner outfielder doing that, though. I would think you'd want a few more tools in a corner outfielder than just
if your
speed.
Center fielder and your right fielder are doing what you expect that they can probably do, you can have that guy. It doesn't matter where he's at.
Yeah, if Jake Fraley turns out to be a 30-homer guy who hits around 300, and you've got, Jared Kelenic in one corner hitting 300 with 40, I mean, then, yeah, the conversation changes. But how valuable is Malik Smith at that point? I don't know. I hear where you're coming from. The game could change soon, but he'll be 30 by the time those guys come around. It's going to be an interesting look.
Yeah, and I mean, Julio Rodriguez will be in the conversation at some point too. So if you're looking 3 years out, probably not. Yeah. But I think if you're looking to sustain to get there, and does he become somebody of value that you can trade? Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's get to another play that's on the list. Important 2019 season for Yusei Kikuchi. It was a secret, surprising coup in a lot of ways when they got Yusei Kikuchi this offseason. International signing. Some of the baseball prospect rankings that came out just before the season started listed him as a prospect and listed him as a top 100 prospect in baseball. When you're a top 100 prospect in baseball that graduates to the majors, to me, you should expect about Major League average performance. Moving forward, you should probably be better than Major League average as a top 100 prospect.
If they drop you on the moon and you're playing there for the first time.
He's not on the moon. That's not like the first time he's played baseball. It's not the United States has a greater density.
Very different. It's very
now,
different.
All this said, there are a lot of factors that go into my expectations of this. One, a lot of established Japanese Major League pitchers have come over right away and had success. Mike Salk brought up a great point the other day on the air with me that when's the last time you saw a pitcher come over from Japan who was not great in his initial performance and then got better over time? In almost every single time that I can remember, they started off really good and then gradually got worse over time. That's generally been the trend for pitchers coming over from Japan. So how do we assess the first half for Yusei Kikuchi, and what should we expect moving forward?
It's been a struggle. It hasn't been smooth. I think that this has been approached as a development year for him in all aspects. And I think to that effect, I think that there are a lot of things that they didn't do or haven't done with him because they didn't want to throw everything at him to change all at once. And it's about development with him. I don't think he was viewed, I know he wasn't viewed as a finished product when he got here. But I think that you need to feel better about this, see significant progress in the second half. And I think that for the first half, I think they really were, up until about 2 weeks ago, letting him find his way, get adjusted. Because he is a mature pitcher. He's not going to automatically follow everybody. He did have a level of success in Japan, and sometimes you really can't make changes, and I'm by no means saying that he's difficult. They've allowed him. You know, they respected that. They wanted to see where that went. But sometimes, you know, until you hit bottom, you're not asking for the help. And the lineups that he is facing right now are vastly different than what he faced before, and that's had huge impact on him. And I think that you will start to see, and you've already seen some changes in, they're adding a pitch that I don't think they planned on adding until the off season, and bringing back that changeup. You're starting to see that a little bit more. They are working with the catchers to work with him a little bit differently. They are working with technologies to work with him a little bit more differently, and just show him, you know, what the ball looks like out of hand, and the different you know, spins and angles and everything. And he's a guy that's always been really into the numbers, but they are taking everything to a different level right now with everything that they have available to them than they had before. I mean, they're doing a lot of video sessions. They're showing him some things that Marco does. They're videoing Marco to show him with some things that he does. And they're now, I think for the first time, really starting to put a lot more on his plate. So I think they expect to see more. But it obviously is a very important piece. It was not only where they made a big investment, but it's an area of need, a huge area of need.
Huge area of need.
Moving forward. You need
Top of the
him
rotation
to be
arms.
solid.
Oh.
I don't know if you need him to be top, but you need him to be, you know, on a good team, a very good team, solid number 3.
He's got to be a playoff
Probably
pitcher.
number 2.
He has to be able to be a starting pitcher on your playoff roster to feel like it was a worthwhile
Doesn't
investment.
have to be it tomorrow.
No.
But
He's got to prove that he can do it, you know.
I think we're in the point where you saw the big stumble, now what?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you about Yusei, particularly, just knowing from the inside, from what you see and from what you hear, how has his stuff looked from an inside perspective? Because we can see the results, and they're not great, but what do they say about his stuff?
We've seen the good and we've seen the bad. I mean, the straight ball is fairly straight, but that doesn't, the fastball. I invented a pitch.
Yeah.
The fastball
Not effective,
is
but
very straight, and so he needs to learn how to use that off of his other pitches a little bit more than trying to pitch off of his fastball, which is different. But he can use it for effect, and the more they've been trying to get him up, and up with that, and it's not an easy thing. I think he's made some progress with that. The slider, when he is on, is a very good slider. He's had no consistency with it whatsoever. He has in the past. He's got to get back to that. So, you know, his main 2 pitches, and then we haven't seen any consistency with the velocity. We saw the 96, 97 once. And you need him to be up more closer to 94, 95 than what we have seen. It's nice if he can pop the 96, 97. So, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen what he is at his best. They have not been able to get it out of him very often.
Interesting. Some of that's got to be recovered from injury and adjusting to new schedules and everything like that too as well, right?
I don't know about injury, but I think, yes, adjusting to new schedules, throwing too much. They're really trying to get him to back off of that right now. And also, you know, let's go ahead and look at the human element of this too. You know, massive move, the exhilaration of pitching in Japan, your first game, losing your father days later, going through everything that you went through with your father, who was dying, you know, for the better part of 2 years, I think it was, and, you know, wife due with first child any day now. So there's a lot, and, you know, expectations that he had for himself, and then everything that we see with all of the Japanese players, expectations that the Japanese baseball fans have for him, and the media that he deals with here on an everyday basis. So there's a lot of adjustment there on top of everything else.
Yeah. Let's move forward to, I think there's one more really important name left on this roster to discuss, and it's Kyle Seager. We thought that some of the major changes he'd made in the offseason would make a difference. He's snake bit. He got the injury. It just never got off the right way, never got started the right way. if we view this as his season starting once his injury happened, this all makes a lot of sense because he's typically been a slow starter. How do we sort of break down what Kyle Seager's looked like so far, and is it still reasonable to expect that he can get back to his form from 3 years ago?
It's hard to break down because he's had another injury since. He hurt the other hand, and it's one that you're not going to hear a lot about, and he's not going to talk about, but I can tell you it's wrapped every day before and after the game. And that's discouraging because we don't know how long that's going to last, and if it is, anything close to what he was dealing with last year, it's another lost season. I hope he can get out there. I hope he can continue with the changes that he's made. You can see it in batting practice. You can see, the different approach. You can see how he's able to hit all fields, and he goes to work on that. I think that's huge in the second half to see if he can continue with what he has tried. And if you look at it, before that hand injury, I think he was trending upward with the changes. I think you were seeing him go the other way a little bit more. You were seeing him go up the middle more. Now everything seems to be pulse side with him. I don't know how much of that is the injury. So there's not a lot you can do there, but tough to see what's happened with him. Tough to see what's happened with Mitch Haniger, who never got off to a good start, then had the injury, now has had the setback. And, again, you potentially could be looking at 2 lost seasons there. And it's not that you need a lot of answers about Mitch Haniger, but he did have that slow start. You did want to see him pull out of that. You hope he gets a couple of months to go to work on that and find out why that happened.
Yeah. Not only that, but a lost year for Mitch Haniger, it hurts him, obviously, in his career path, but it hurts the Mariners, and they just have so much less certainty about what they're going to do. They held on to Marco Gonzalez and Mitch Haniger, those 2 players. They were the vestiges of this last effort to make the playoffs. They were the guys they identified and said, we think they could be a part of a championship team. I think they were careful not to say that they could be leading the championship teams. If Mitch Haniger loses a season, he comes back next year and has a similar-ish start to the season. He's batting .230 with some okay power numbers, playing good defense. It puts the Mariners in a difficult spot. They're going to have to make a decision about him because do you want to invest in that guy? Do you want to try and lock him up like they did with Kyle Seager to a somewhat reasonable deal early that ends up ballooning to where you think he's going to be? Does he even want to sign that deal? Does he want to take his chances to go do something else? I think this lost season for Mitch Haniger is a big question mark for what's going to happen in his future in Seattle.
I think they're beyond that.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way?
I think that with everything that they did in the offseason last year, I think those questions were answered ahead of time. And we don't see an extension right now. I think that, as I said before, I think everybody not named J.P. Crawford is available right now. And I think with what you've got coming in the outfield, I think Mitch Haniger, and again, it would have to be for a price.
Right, which is going to be really hard to get right now. So
right.
We're probably talking this offseason.
With what you've got coming, I think that he is probably, next year I would say he absolutely is available. If he is not locked up to
Interesting. It's for a future podcast, future vodcast, but did they make the right decision with Mitch Haniger, knowing what we know now? That'd be an interesting question to answer in a longer stint.
I'm not saying they've done anything or they haven't done anything,
right.
To be clear there, but kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to me. I think that's an absolutely right way to look at this. Other names that you want to touch on from this first half that stood out to you that we should cover?
Really quickly, J.P. Crawford. I think, obviously a positive there. We'll keep watching. I think as well as everything's gone early, it could go poorly very quickly too, but I don't see it. He seems like a baseball player. And to me, and he seems like that kind of top prospect type. Imagine if this were his first call-up to the big leagues. You'd be pretty happy right now.
Yeah, you'd be really excited.
I think you should be pretty happy right now, regardless. Yeah. But I've said this on a bunch of shows, and I've said this on the pre and the post. He just has the appearance of a guy that is ready to go. He's gone through everything that he needs to go through in the minor leagues. He's had the up and downs a couple of times. Didn't really have a ton of major league at-bats or experience before he got here. I think a lot of people thought, he played for 2 years. No. They were short stints that he was up, and there were injuries as well. Got all that behind him, fixed the defense, and I think you've got a player who is at pretty incredible starting point because, again, he's going to, I think, progress upward.
Yeah.
And they think that there's power there. We'll see. But I'm pretty happy with what you see right now, and the defense looks a lot better. Catchers, I think you've got to be very happy what you have from the right side, from the left side, and you've got to be really happy with what you're seeing down at low A right now, or high A right now with Cal Raleigh.
That's an interesting one. I was going to ask you about Cal Raleigh because it's been a while since Mike Zunino, and then before that it really wasn't ever the case that the Mariners have had a catching prospect. Somebody you could look forward and say, this guy's on the rise. It's worth watching. Cal Raleigh was a relatively high pick, 2 years ago?
He's only 22. He just turned 22.
Young guy out of USC, right? It's been a long time since I've had a catcher to look forward to. What do you know about Cal Raleigh and sort of his trajectory?
Pretty exciting. He was in big league camp this year, and he didn't really stand out to me, but I don't think, 21-year-old, just turned 22-year-old catcher in a big league camp, his first big league from, at that point, low A, is going to stand out, nor should they at that point. They're usually pretty quiet. Big guy, that was kind of a surprise. Bat guy, switch hitter, which that's what really blows me away, is he is taking on everything that he is taking on with the catching and maintaining 2 swings. He's been good from both sides of the plate. He's absolutely torn it up in the last month. Talked with Dan Wilson quite a bit about him and with others in the organization, and they are very happy with the direction that he is going in right now. Has made strides defensively. Heard the leadership aspect is good. Which is good to hear. He reminded me a little bit of Justin Smoke when I attempted to interview him.
Interesting. So maybe not the most exciting talker, but a baseball guy with a good attitude.
And a switch hitter as well.
Yeah.
Has stolen 4 bases and has a caught stealing rate of 40% right now.
That's great.
Yeah, so then the stolen bases are hilarious. I keep double checking every time I see that he's stolen another one. And it's not important that your catcher can steal bases, but
Dan
it tells
Wilson
you
was the master of the delayed steal.
It's a lot bigger. It tells you that he is smart and athletic enough. So I think that's exciting, and I would imagine that if he continues on the pace that he's continuing right now, he's probably 2 years away. And what Omar and Tom are doing, I know that we don't see it, and that there's really no good catcher metric right now, but the internal metrics right now on both of the catchers are good defensively. Omar has made strides, has many strides to still make, but I like what I've seen from him and the balance that he has. He is a good clubhouse guy. He is a funny guy, but he also has a good amount of intensity. He seems to have that balance that you want. As a catcher, I think that they are putting more and more on the catchers over the last couple of weeks. It was an interesting story when the bullpen was struggling so horrendously and walking everybody, and then all of a sudden it looked a lot better. I asked Scott Service about it, and I said, obviously, you got rid of a bunch of guys, but what do you attribute this to? And he said the catchers. So they went after the catchers for what the relievers were doing, and they stepped up what they wanted them to do in meetings. And they basically you better come prepared for this, and we're not going to tell you what you're going to do and what your game plan is. You're going to come in and tell us. So Tom Murphy told me it takes about 3 hours of his own homework before each series. Wow. And then they go into the meetings, and it's not just the pitching coach, it's the analytics guys, the manager will stop in. All 3 of the pitching coaches are there. So he said you don't want to go in and sound like you don't know what you're talking about there. So they're really turning more over and not just developing the offense and the defense, but developing the catcher, which is interesting because there's a lot of thought in the game that it will not be too long before we see, all pitches called from the dugout, which I hope, there's enough change going on that a lot of people don't like. I hope we don't see that, and it sounds like they're not believers in that they are putting as much as they are on their young catchers right
That's
now.
An interesting development. That's another great topic. We'll say that for the off-season because I am firmly on the other side of that. But I like that. Yeah, I'm big into that. I'm big into putting microphones into people's heads and getting some better
Might as
better
well just give you
information
the
out.
remote and the play-by and the little.
Let's make managers useful. I don't think they're that useful in games, so let's make them
I
more
think
useful.
there are better ways to make them useful.
Yeah, make them
I
bring
like
out
catchers.
seeds to the pitchers or something.
Catcher can see everything. He knows where his pitcher is. He can see the swings that are being taken. If you're smart enough to put it all together, I think that's one of the more exciting, interesting aspects of the game is what the guy behind the plate is doing.
Fair enough.
I don't need that to be coming from upstairs.
Let's move into the second half. Some of the things you're looking forward to see from the second half, maybe some players we haven't seen yet that you're looking forward to see, and potentially some timelines when you think certain players may actually end up making it to the squad.
Well, as I said, you've got to see cleaner baseball, and Perry Hill told me when everything started, when it became very apparent that the defense was very not good early on, and all of a sudden you saw people out every day for early work. Perry Hill told me, watch in July. That's when we'll start to see things turn around because of the work that they're putting in. I think we're already seeing a good amount of it. But, let's go ahead and draw the line. Here we are at the midway part. What are they defensively from here on? You've got guys in the positions that they should be in. You've got some of your lesser defenders out of crucial positions right now. You've got J.P. Crawford up. You've got Kyle Seager back. And say what you want about defense or about his offense, but that defense looked very different the minute he got over there.
Yes.
I don't know when we're going to see Ryan Healy, but it would be good to have his glove back at first base. That's an odd one. And the outfielders can catch the ball. We were in Houston. I was talking to Mike Cameron. I'm like, what'd you do with Malik? He just shakes his head. You have to catch the ball. You cannot drop the ball.
That's a great point. One of the first, that's a fairly fact. You want to get it out, you got to catch the ball.
You have to catch the ball.
Yeah.
He was shaking his head. And he backed up when Malik had kind of alluded to it. His glove was a problem. His glove definitely was a problem.
I like to think that it was his physical glove. It's like, I'm just going to get a new glove.
Yes,
it's
it
that
was.
glove's fault.
It was.
Unreal.
Yeah, and it's just, Mike said it was not broken in correctly, and he gave him his, and next, how did these things happen?
How many baseball gloves has Malik Smith had in his entire life that he wouldn't know that his baseball glove was causing problems?
Well, here's another one. I mean, you're in spring training. That's somewhere where you figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. That
I don't
just,
know.
you got to catch the ball. I have no idea where
Other
I was.
things that you were looking forward to seeing in the second half. Let's look
defense.
at
Let's
defense is
see positive defense in the second half.
Shedlong at second base.
Let's find out if he can play second base. That's something that they need to find out because I'm seeing other super utilities that I like. Dylan Moore, second half. Let's see progress there. He has not played the outfield much before, and he has not looked terrible. He's made mistakes out there, but he has not had the look of somebody who cannot play the outfield.
No, he looks a little Willie Bloomquist in the outfield to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
He looks a little like, I could technically do it, but really I probably shouldn't be.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, he literally has had 8 games out there, so he should look like that, but I think he's also made some plays, very instinctive plays that I don't think that you would see everybody make. And I've also seen him, if he makes one mistake, so far you're not seeing that mistake made again. If you're seeing everything for the first time out there, I think he is more than holding his own for that guy right now, and I think that he can progress with that. I think he's looked very nice at shortstop, and I think the bat, there's still more to learn about it. He's in a tough position where he isn't playing every day and isn't hitting every day, but I'm interested to see what he does in the second half. I also love the idea, if they go to 26-man rosters, I love the idea of the third catcher and Austin Nola. And he's continued the hitting at this level.
Yeah, big surprise. It's sort of a sleeper. Never really thought of as a real prospect. Sort of thought of as like he's a quad A guy that could maybe fill some space for you if you need it. But if that's a legit thing, like if he's going to be like a Willens Astudillo type from a couple years ago, not from this year, because
done.
Whatever.
You got that out.
Yeah, I mean, if you can be that kind of guy who's sort of a lightning rod, he brings you some offense, brings you some on-base percentage, and can give you a little bit of time at catcher, it's probably valuable.
Right, and allow you to DH one of your catchers if your catchers are your better hitters.
Yeah, especially if you have Omar Narvaez.
Right, and Tom Murphy, who's, and we're learning more about him, but for me, if you have those utility guys, is Shedlong your second baseman?
Yeah.
Does he have to be that super utility guy? Well, he's got to be able to play second base. He's playing a lot more, so we'll watch that down in AAA right now. And what will we watch for? Is D. Gordon going to be moved? Is Mike Leake going to be moved? Are there any surprises that are going to be moved? Along those lines.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I'd seen. In the middle of his difficult stretch of pitching, Marco Gonzalez being mentioned as a possibility for the Yankees. And that name kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody's talking about Mariners to be acquired. So if his name surfaces somewhere, it's because a team is interested and told somebody about it. Not because the Mariners are trying to get that out there. It wouldn't make any sense in the middle of his bad times pitching for the Mariners to float his name out as a trade possibility.
Everything Yankee gets out, so there's no question about that. But yeah, that's interested to take a look at that as well. You say Kikuchi improvement, very important, going to keep an eye on that as well. And how do they get through, the full season? And then, of course, the call-ups is something that...
Yeah, let's go through a couple of them. I'm going to give you some names. Some you'll definitely say no to that I might say maybe, and some that are for sure going to come up. Let's start with Jake Fraley.
I think sooner rather than later.
And you're talking sooner as in before September, potentially?
Yes.
Wow.
And I will go ahead and say I do believe we would have seen him shortly after the All-Star break had he not gotten injured. And now I think the question is, can you get him closer to September and then not have to deal with the
clock issue.
Although I don't think that is a huge issue for this group. I don't think they buy into that as much. But yeah, no, I think absolutely you're going to see him, and it very well could be much sooner than expected.
Justice Sheffield.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any kind of timetable? He's killing it in AA right now. There's some thought that maybe let's try and go back and get him to AAA, get him right there too, make sure that success translates. What do you think?
You know, it'll be interesting because what if it doesn't translate and you're also dealing with just a home run, just insanity in the PCL. So maybe they skip him. I don't know. It is a concern what's going on in the PCL. You know, the new baseballs are one thing, but it's always been a launching pad in most of the places that they play, and that can make it not tough to evaluate what pitchers are doing because they can evaluate everything a pitcher does. They have the technology, and it's very different with pitchers than it is with hitters. So, you know, he can give up 8 runs, and he could still be making good pitches. 8's probably a little extreme, but what does that do to him? And that's the biggest question. And the biggest thing is they need him in a good place. I don't know if you've heard or not, but the feeling has been, for the most part, the stuff has been there. There's been little to no question about the stuff. He loses his mind on the hill. He is an adrenaline guy. He gets very amped up, and he is. I saw it in spring training when he finally got to pitch in his first game because if he's sitting here, he's going to be the most chill. Well, Brent's pretty chill, so he might not be as chill. He'd probably be the second chillest person in the room. And then he gets out on the hill, and it's like his hair is on fire. And afterwards, when you talk to him, you saw it, and I was like, wow. And for me, I was really fired up by it. I was like, he was really excited to pitch. That's really cool. Oh no, it's a problem.
See, well, this is an interesting thing because passion and intensity on the mound is something that made some of the best pitchers we've ever seen great. It's one of the things that made Randy Johnson so great. But there has to be a way that you understand. It's almost like that scene from X-Men First Class when Magneto's trying to learn how to use his powers. This is a deep reference for most of you, and if you're under the age of 30, you've got a shot, and over, you probably have none. But Professor Xavier's trying to teach Magneto how to use his powers in a stronger way than he had before. And it turns out that the depth of his emotion was the thing that gave him power, but he had to understand how to use it. I think pitchers can be somewhat the same way. If you understand how to use your emotions and what they do to you, it can separate you. It can make you from a good pitcher to a great pitcher to elite.
Use your powers for good, but he's got to harness it, and that's something that they learned. And that's something that they're going to work on right now. So would it be better to jump him straight from success in AA and see what happens? I don't know. But I think they do want, I'm not going to say they need to see him at the big league level this year. Again, very young, just turned 23. There's time. But I think they very much would like to see him at the level and get that development going.
Justin Dunn.
Good question.
Justin Dunn pitching in AA right now, right? He was one of the pitchers that came over in the what I'm now going to refer to as the Jared Kelenic trade, coming over from the Mets and the Robinson Cano and Diaz deal. He's pitched great. He's got an electric arm and great stuff with great results. So, do you think we see him?
You might see him as a September call-up who doesn't pitch.
Interesting. Okay. Get used to the atmosphere kind of guy.
Get used to it. I mean, he's going to be on an innings limit. They're going to be careful with that. But they might want to get him the exposure. I don't know that we see him pitch.
Fair.
It's not out of the question, but that's not as easy. They really would like to see Sheffield this year.
Evan White. We're getting there.
That probably sounded good.
We're getting there.
Did you get that?
Because here's my case for it. I think you will see him because I think that Jerry Dipoto is pretty excited about getting some of his guys up there to be seen so they can promise the future.
You know what?
And I think it's important.
I said at the beginning of the season I thought he would be a September call-up, so I'm going to say that now. Got off to a slow start, has been stellar since.
Crushing the ball.
You know, would they like him at first base on opening day next season? Is that out of the question? So, I think if he continues, you will see him in September. It'll
seem like a fast track from an outside perspective, but in reality, he was an advanced college player to begin with.
Right.
The only thing they ever questioned was whether or not he could have consistency and power with his bat, which it seems like he's starting to prove.
In the second half of last year.
Yeah, so we're going to have a full season of changes. You've got an older college player. You've got a huge need at first base, and the season that doesn't really matter too much. I wouldn't expect being in the majors for September would wreck this guy. It doesn't seem like that should be the case for this kind of player.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, I would expect to see
Okay,
him
you talked
too.
me into it, yes.
Good. Thank you. Count one for boy Howdy there. Other names that we should be talking about. The long-forgotten name of Eric Swanson.
I'm trying to get a little bit more on him. He was injured for a while. He's up and pitching again, so...
Very bad in the majors this year. Went down and was very bad again in AAA.
Yeah, but
after being average
Yeah.
in AAA before he came up.
Right. So I think that if he gets himself right, they'll get another look. But I think they're going to work on a couple of different things with him. And so they're going to try and make some changes there. So that would make it a little bit tougher. But I think there's a good chance you're going to have at least one rotation opening. So there'll be a possibility
Great
there.
chance, 1 to 3,
Yeah.
I would say. Last name I think we should probably cover is Kyle Lewis.
Probably not. Let's remember...
Older than every player we've talked about so far, other than Eric Swanson.
Doesn't matter. I mean, everybody knows what happened with him. It was a catastrophic knee injury. There were all sorts of setbacks. Great to see what he did in spring training. Came out of spring training very, very slow. I think hit 250 with an OPS under 700 for the first 2 months of the season. Has been on fire for the last month, which is good. But this is his first full healthy season as a Mariner. So I think that might be a push. Could they reward him for what he's done and bring him up in September? Yes. So it's a possibility, but I don't think that would be as much of a we're doing this to get you ready for the start of next year. I think there's still work to be done there.
All right. Well, I think that covers it from what I think we should be hitting on. What do you got left for the second half of the season and where the Mariners are right now?
Let's see what comes up with the trades, what this team looks like after the deadline, and there are no moves after the deadline, so that's going to
First year ever, so July 31st is the drop-dead date.
Yep.
Unless you're cut, players will not be moving teams.
Yep. So we'll look at that, and I think with that, you'll probably see a little of this, especially if rotation pieces are moved.
Mike Leake's going to be traded.
I can't imagine that
1,000,000%.
They tried the off season, and there was a deal that was in place earlier. He clearly would like to be traded, so I think that is something that we are going to see. I think that again, anybody not named J.P. Crawford is available right now, so you could see more on that end.
If Marco Gonzalez puts together 4 incredible starts to come out of the box, and some team says, you know what, that guy is good enough to be a rotation piece for us for the next 3 years.
You're going to have to get a lot for him.
Right.
But I know that there's a lot of confidence in a lot of the younger pitching that they have, and I think that it's going to move quickly. When you look at a Logan Gilbert, when you even look at a George Kirby at the beginning of this year, I think these are guys that are going to move quickly. I think they think that Justin Dunn is somebody they're going to be able to lean on a little bit. So the pitching, I think, is going to come along quicker. And the only other thing that I would note in that, and with these pitchers and what we're seeing in the minor leagues right now, and what we just saw in the international signings, and just quick recap, the Mariners went for quantity, not for quality. They didn't. Everybody's got a pool that you cannot exceed. Some teams will go get 3 big guys. Other teams will go get 9, 10, 11, 12 players. The Mariners were on the 12-player side. I think they've invested so much in development right now, and it is hard to keep up with everything that they're doing. Have been cutting edge on so many different things. Some things have worked, some things have not. Look at the high performance, having one person in charge of it, that did not work out well. But the camps that they are running in the off season, the programs that they are using, there's going to be a lot more of the teleconference type 6-week programs with different groups. They did that with Game Calling You this offseason, but I think that when you bring a player into the organization right now, it's not so much as let's let their talent come through, it's what can we do with this talent, and I think they're doing things differently, and in the pitching department in particular, with everything that's been instituted on the technology side, with what Brian DeLunas is doing on that side and on the biomechanics side, and how they are utilizing all of that, I think your pitchers are going to move quickly. And I think that they are going to do a lot of developing. I think they're going to be adding and complementing what they have rather than just sitting back and waiting for them to kind of shine through.
Great stuff, Shannon. Lots to watch for in the second half. An interesting first half in this Mariners reimagine, rebuild. From David Bell and John Mabry signing off. See you in the second half.